Welcome to Reading and Writing Between the Lines, a podcast series about communication skills in the workplace. I'm your host, John Witzman. Join me as I speak with industry professionals and Conestoga faculty and alumni to explore their journeys with reading and writing skills. Follow us as we talk about how communications learning has changed over the years, how these skills are used in a wide range of industries, and the future of workplace communications. You used the term plain language just a moment ago, and I wonder if you could unpack that philosophy or that approach a little bit.
Well, so there's actually like a formal sort of plain language movement and a definition of plain language, and there's experts who do plain language writing and plain language editing. It's very common. The basic principles are to keep it as simple as possible.
Right.
And it's very popular for people to train government.
Right.
Offices in plain language, people who communicate with the public,
right,
to make sure that the message is clearly understood. Public health, that sort of thing, very important for plain language. But I think plain language works on all levels because the easier it is to understand what's been written, the better it is for everybody.
I couldn't agree more, and certainly as somebody who sees a lot of student writing, it's really interesting to consider the way in which I'm now aware of a plain language movement and of the priorities of communicating clearly and emphasizing that understanding, and yet at the same time, I'm also aware that is probably not the number one priority of most people as they approach a formal writing environment. It was, when you were going through your schooling, was plain language something that was prioritized for you? Do you remember?
Well, I don't think it was prioritized in sort of an academic setting.
Yeah.
But I was in, humanities circles where we're writing philosophy and history and English and literature.
Yeah.
However, clear writing was prioritized.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Like good, clear writing. I think. But yeah, I see what you're getting at.
Where do you think that?
There's a lot of pressure on people.
Right. Yeah.
People feel this pressure that they have to write fancy. Especially, I'm in school now, I have to write fancy, or I've gone back to school, I have to write in a certain fancy way. And no. You want to get your point across clearly. Yeah. You don't need to create these, overly wordy sentences and complex sentences.
Yeah.
And you can talk about complicated, sophisticated ideas using plain language. You don't have to try to emulate some sort of, formal academic writing of years ago.
Hopefully that's encouraging for people to hear because I think it's a really, really empowering message. It is, I think, an invitation for a great many more people to see themselves as being capable in this area because it does not imply that the domain of communicating clearly is exclusive, right? It doesn't require one to shop at the fanciest word stores, right? And to wear the fanciest word clothing around. And yet, I wonder, do you think that you are more capable now of communicating clearly and achieving these goals of being concise and stripping away all of the unnecessary excess? Do you think that you're better at that because of all of the repetition and all of the practice that you've had along the way?
Absolutely. I had really high marks in high school in English, and then I got to university and I kind of got smacked in the face by professors who were like, this isn't good. And I was like, what?
Yes.
And, I had to learn again. And then I had to keep learning. And then I went to graduate school and they're like, this is terrible writing. I need to learn again.
Right.
And I have taken so many classes in copy editing. And I've been editing for various different contexts and things for years. And I've gotten better and better and better. So I think that's one of the things I try to convey to people who struggle with writing, my colleagues. And, I find writing is so hard. And I think people who are not professional writers and editors think that we just sit down and write and it's good.
Yes.
And good writers aren't good writers. They're good revisers.
Yes. Right.
They spend a lot of time thinking about what they're going to write, and then they write something, and then they revise it. And I would say I do that even in text messages.
Yep.
You know, I tend to reread a text message, unless I'm just with, back and forth with friends. My Teams messages, my emails, like
Right.
I revise all the time.
Right.
I don't just come up with the right way to say things
Right.
on the first go. And people who struggle with writing, it seems like they have to sit down and write it. I'm like, just write it and we'll fix it.
Right.
And I think that's the biggest thing that makes writing seem like it's a hard thing to do, is
Right.
this idea that you just have to do it.
Or that it's innate, right? That
Yeah.
that some people have just naturally got that ability, whereas others don't.
Right.
And that is a kind of inevitable characterization of their abilities. It's, I think, potentially daunting to hear that in order to achieve this level of, command over your communication skills requires, a great number of years of practice. However, I think that the flip side of that coin is that every attempt you make at writing is a step forward in your progression.
Yes.
That simply the act of attending to the project of communicating and writing, every time you spend a little bit more time on the planning and the brainstorming, every time you spend a little bit more time organizing an outline, pushing point form notes around, moving this idea over here, every time you spend a little bit more on the revision stage, even if that time spent is only moving you forward one step, it is the only way that you actually do get better. That this is truly a skill that is rooted in practice and time.
It really is. It really is. And it does feel daunting, but I think people often struggle when they're writing. They think writing takes a long time.
Right.
And I think maybe they're not putting the effort where that needs to be.
Right.
Because I know those school assignments where you have to formally do the outlining and do all that. People think it's busy work.
Right.
I thought it was busy work in high school, but that's because I was a good writer in high school compared to my peers.
Yes.
So I didn't feel the need to do all of those steps and hand them in. That bothered me. But when I look now at my work, they're not busy work. That's actually how it's done.
And that marks the end of another episode of Reading and Writing Between the Lines, a podcast hosted by me, John Witzman, on behalf of the Communications Department and School of Interdisciplinary Studies at Conestoga College. You can find other episodes of this series on our YouTube channel, Reading and Writing Between the Lines. Stay tuned for more episodes. Thanks for listening.